What is Larys Strong planning in House of the Dragon Season 4? After everything that happened in Season 3, there is one character whose next move may be harder to predict than almost anyone else, Larys Strong. The clubfoot has survived while kings have fallen, alliances have collapsed, and powerful families have destroyed themselves. And now, as House of the Dragon heads into its fourth and final season, Larys is once again somewhere in the shadows. But what is he actually planning? Is he still loyal to Aegon? Is he preparing to betray him? Could he return to King's Landing? Or is Larys waiting for the perfect moment to decide which side is most likely to survive? The most important thing to remember about Larys is that he has never been a traditional loyalist. He doesn't fight for a cause in the same way that Rhaenyra, Aegon, or Aemon do. He fights for his own survival. And that makes him one of the most dangerous players remaining in the Dance of the Dragons. By the end of Season 3, Larys has already demonstrated exactly how far he is willing to go. He helped Aegon escape King's Landing when Aemon's influence became too powerful. He stayed with Aegon through some of the king's darkest moments. But when Aegon decided that he wanted to stop running and make another attempt at reclaiming his power, Larys made a very interesting choice. He walked away. That doesn't necessarily mean that Larys had abandoned Aegon. It means that Larys understood something very important. Aegon's future was uncertain, and Larys did not want to be tied permanently to a losing side. This is classic Larys Strong. He watches, he calculates, and then he moves when everyone else has already committed themselves. That's why Season 4 could be particularly important for him. The Dance of the Dragons is entering its final stage. There are fewer and fewer players left. The war is becoming increasingly chaotic. And when the number of survivors becomes smaller, information becomes even more valuable. Larys has information. He knows the Greens. He knows Aegon. He knows how the royal court operates. He understands the weaknesses of powerful people, and he knows how quickly political fortunes can change. That makes him incredibly valuable to whoever eventually controls King's Landing. But there's another reason Larys could become extremely important. He has already demonstrated that he is willing to change sides. In George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, Larys is described as a man who changes allegiances as circumstances change. His loyalty is never straightforward. That is one of the most important clues to understanding his future. If Aegon begins winning again, Larys has a reason to support him. If Aegon's position collapses, Larys has every reason to find another path. And if Rhaenyra becomes overwhelmingly powerful, Larys could potentially use his knowledge to negotiate his survival. He doesn't need to love the ruler, he simply needs the ruler to need him. That is how Larys has survived for so long. Look at his history. He orchestrated the deaths of his father, Lyonel Strong, and his brother, Harwin Strong, in the fire at Harrenhal. The television series made Larys' responsibility for that tragedy explicit, whereas the book presents the circumstances more ambiguously. Why did he do it? Because Larys understood that removing those two men would change his position. He would become Lord of Harrenhal. Sometimes it belongs to the person who knows what everyone on the throne is afraid of. That is Larys, and Season 4 could give him one final opportunity to use everything he has learned. The biggest question is whether he will return to Aegon. The book provides some major clues. In Fire and Blood, Larys remains connected to Aegon's story even after the war turns against the Greens. His role becomes particularly important during the final political collapse. And without getting too far ahead of the television story, Larys eventually becomes one of the people caught up in the question of what should happen to Aegon too. That could be extremely significant for Season 4, because the television adaptation has already changed several details from the book. Season 3 made major alterations to character motivations, timelines, and events, meaning viewers shouldn't assume that every detail from Fire and Blood will appear exactly the same way on screen. So instead of asking, will Larys do exactly what he did in the book? The better question is, what function does Larys serve in the final season? And the answer may be simple. He is the ultimate survivor. Season 4 is expected to be the final season of House of the Dragon, bringing the Dance of the Dragons toward its conclusion. That means the show has to start bringing its political storylines together. The dragons will continue to matter, the battles will continue, but eventually someone will have to decide what happens after the fighting stops. And Larys is exactly the kind of person who can survive that transition. Imagine a Westeros where the Targaryens have exhausted themselves. Dragons are dead, armies have been destroyed, King's Landing has changed hands, and the surviving nobles are trying to figure out who is actually in control. That is the environment in which Larys thrives. He doesn't need to be the strongest person in the room. He needs to be the person who knows what everyone else wants, and he can use that knowledge to negotiate his own survival. There is also the possibility that Larys could become Aegon's most important secret weapon. Aegon is impulsive. He has repeatedly made decisions based on emotion. Larys is almost the complete opposite. He is patient, cold, strategic, and willing to make decisions that other people are too afraid to make. That combination could make them extremely dangerous together. But it could also make their relationship extremely unstable, because Aegon has already learned not to trust Larys completely. And Larys has never given Aegon any reason to believe that his loyalty is unconditional. If Larys believes Aegon is going to lose, he could disappear again. And if Larys believes Aegon can win, he could suddenly reappear with information that changes everything. That's the beauty of the character. You never know whether his next move is an act of loyalty or preparation for betrayal. And there's another major question. This is where things become particularly interesting. Larys has spent years operating around the Green Court. He knows their secrets. But he also understands the weaknesses of the Black faction. If Rhaenyra takes King's Landing again, someone like Larys could potentially become useful to her. But would Rhaenyra trust him? Probably not. And Larys doesn't necessarily need her trust. He only needs her to believe that she needs him. That is how he operates. He doesn't ask for power directly. He makes himself useful to people who have power. Then he waits. Eventually, they realize they can't easily get rid of him. That's why comparing Larys to characters like Littlefinger and Varys isn't entirely unreasonable. All three understand the value of information. But Larys is arguably even more ruthless. He has already proven that family means very little to him when power is involved. And his philosophy is almost the opposite of the traditional Westerosi idea of honor. He believes that attachment creates weakness. The fewer people you care about, the fewer people can be used against you. That philosophy has made him exceptionally difficult to defeat, but it may also be his greatest weakness. Because Larys has spent his entire life eliminating relationships. Eventually, there may be nobody left who wants to protect him. And that brings us to the most important prediction for Season 4. Larys may survive the war for a long time, but survival doesn't necessarily mean victory. The end of his story in Fire and Blood is deeply connected to the political aftermath of Aegon II's death. Larys is ultimately accused of conspiring against the king and is brought before Cregan Stark. He refuses to give the straightforward confession that Cregan wants, and that decision leads to his execution. If the television series follows the broad direction of the source material, Larys's final story could therefore happen after the main fighting is essentially over. That would be fitting, because Larys's greatest enemy may not be a dragon. It may not be Aegon. It may not be Rhaenyra. It may be the consequences of surviving too many political games. He has manipulated almost everyone. Eventually, someone may decide that he has become too dangerous to keep alive. So, what is Larys Strong planning in Season 4? The honest answer is that the show has not revealed his exact plan yet, but his history gives us a very strong clue. Larys will probably wait. He will watch which way the war is moving. He will collect information. He will identify the strongest surviving player. and then he will make his move. That's what Larys has always done. He doesn't rush toward power. He waits for power to come within reach. And as House of the Dragon enters its final season, that makes him one of the most unpredictable characters still alive. The Targaryens may believe the war is about dragons. They may believe it is about blood. They may believe it is about who has the strongest claim to the Iron Throne. But Larys Strong understands something different. The real game is about who is still standing when the war is over. And if anyone has mastered the art of staying alive, it is the clubfoot. So don't assume that Larys disappearing means he is finished. It may mean he is preparing for his most important move yet. Because while everyone else is fighting for the Iron Throne, Larys Strong may simply be fighting to survive it.